Welcome to the Sports Betting Preview Show, a pregame.com podcast. This is segment 1. We're going to be talking NBA handicapping. I'm joined with my partner in crime, as usual, Vegas Runner. NBA playoffs, they start Saturday. We're taping on Thursday. And let me tell you, they came out, NBA playoffs, they came out with the lines.
Finally.
Basically, at noon our time, Vegas, and that's 3 o'clock Eastern.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And that just goes to say that the sports books, they're shell-shocked. In the last couple of years, they got roughed up a little bit in the playoffs, especially 2 years ago. They're just, they're intimidated to come out with these lines right away.
And they know there's no longer that pride of, we got the first number out there. Before, books prided themselves on, we're willing to put out a number and go ahead, bet into it, tell us where we're wrong. Now, it's like they want to find out where they're wrong before they even book a single penny, and then the rest get to move the number on air without ever even booking a penny. So, the game's really changed. But what the books need to realize is the wise guys have changed their approach as well. They're not going to tip their hand immediately like they did back in the day where they were going to tell you right away where you're off. Now they're throwing, those fades and wait until later to come back on another side.
Interesting stuff. NBA playoff handicapping, it's a different animal than the regular season. You still do the basic things that you do all year, but the difference is in NBA playoff rather than regular season is you're going to play maybe 7 games in a row against the same team. For a situational handicapper, it gives you a great advantage for the ebb and flow of how a series is going.
Sure.
You get to watch these teams, watch the matchups. Vegas, they're going to, we talked before we come on air, you said the line's going to be the line. They're going to come out with their power ratings, and things are not going to change that much.
No, they're going to adjust barely based on perception alone, just a little bit, and they're going to stick to their guns like they did, like we spoke about a couple years ago, and they got hurt because they weren't willing to adjust the number and say, you know what, we were off. Maybe they shouldn't be a 6-point favorite at home. Maybe they should be a 9, and they weren't willing to do that. So I think there you're right. That's where you get an edge because they're going to stick to those power ratings. They know Team A is going to be this much of a favorite at home, that much of a dog on the road. And from then, they're just hoping that the money comes in balanced. But I think you'll have a huge edge if you're a situational guy like yourself because of that fact that the number's going to stay where it is, but the situation around the game changes.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind when you talk about situational handicapping in the NBA playoffs, you've got 2 kinds of teams. You've got a team that fought and clawed right down to the final week of the season to maybe make a playoff spot. Now, this year there was really only one playoff spot left up for grabs in the final week of the season.
Right, the East.
The East, when it was the battle between Chicago and Toronto. And it actually literally went down to the last day. Chicago had to win or a Toronto loss for them to get the win their way into the playoffs. Now, they're facing a team that's been on cruise control for the last 2 weeks of the season. Cleveland had everything wrapped up, best record.
Already discussing 10 days ago what players want to rest, what players want to continue playing. So,
do you view it as an advantage or a disadvantage? The team that come in having to fight or the team that was in on cruise control?
If you're an experienced team that's been there and done that, I think getting a chance to rest a little bit can be an advantage because you know what it's going to take in the playoffs. You know the kind of intensity you need to bring day in and day out. I think if you're not a team that's experienced playing as a unit. Now, you might have experienced guys who've been in playoffs with other teams, but I'm saying right here, this unit, this team, if they don't have that experience of playing together and knowing how to turn it on when they have to, I think the rest could be bad. Because when you're playing top-level competition, you just can't turn the switch on and off at your choosing. And we've seen that backfire on teams a lot in the past. So I think that's where you need to, distinguish between, is it a veteran veteran ball club or not a veteran ball club, at least as far as playing together. Now, a team that's clawed their way in, obviously they're playing with momentum because they got in. So the momentum's positive momentum. But with that said, how much effort did you exert? And now you have to play a series, like you said, where you may face this same team 7 times.
Right.
And I think physically you have to be, have the ability to play those 7 games.
Now, taking what you're just saying, and I agree with everything that you've just said, but I'm going to take it a step farther. I think at the beginning of the series, the team that fought their way into the playoffs has an advantage over the team that was on cruise control, because you were full throttle all the way to the end. You're playing at peak performance because you won your way into the playoffs. And that other team, we've seen it happen in football where teams rest players,
all the time.
They get out of sync. You never can simulate game speed in practice.
No.
I don't care what you do. And in a case like, the Cavs in Chicago, I mean, let's face it, that is the scenario.
Sure.
Chicago clawed their way in.
That's the perfect example.
They had to come from behind because Toronto had the leg up on them, and then
the tiebreaker and all.
The injury to Bosch really, put the kibosh to
ended the season for them.
But I think that Chicago could possibly go into Cleveland and steal one of those games, or at least definitely make a game of it, and you're going to be getting a sizable number there. And then, but as you take the series and it draws its way out,
the cream will rise.
The cream rises to the top, and the better team is going to make their stand.
And the question that I wanted to pose to you, that we definitely need to cover on this podcast, is what we all hear about year in, year out for the last 10, 15 years when you reach the NBA playoffs, and you've been around doing it longer than I have, so I know you've heard it more than I have, being an excellent basketball handicapper like you are. Zigzag. Give it to me. Lay it on me.
The zigzag flip-flop, whichever way you want to call it, that's probably one of the most popular.
Everyone's heard of it.
It's a scenario that it was like gold few years back. But like anything else, when you start to talk about things and
loses its value,
it loses its value because as we're becoming smarter, Vegas,
has to adjust to the.
It's like the best example of that is, and we got about 2.5 minutes left here, is Monday Night Home Dogs.
Yeah, how much money? They were free money. It was back in the day.
Free money, and then everybody's writing their articles, writing their books, and selling systems. And Vegas isn't idiots. They know if everybody's going to be playing something a certain way, they've got to adjust to the market. Market was to do that. And the zigzag has lost a little bit of its value because it is so widely known.
So they had to adjust the number a bit.
They start to adjust it a little bit, that you're not, because in common sense, if a team wins, if they're -7 and they win by 12, you should see the line automatically go to 8. You should maybe go to 7.5 or 8.
Sure.
But because of the zigzag theory, it's not making the jumps that it used to make, and you're having to take the same number in the next game. But to look at it from a mechanical standpoint, why it works is, let's face it, when you win that first game, and especially in the first round where they draw out the schedule for whatever reason, the first round you'll play Saturday,
and play till Wednesday.
Yeah, it's crazy. If you're the team that won game 1 and you won easily, what do you do different when you go to the chalkboard and prepare for game 2?
Yeah, and all them days, not much.
Everything you did worked. On the flip side, or the zigzag of it, if what you did in game 1 didn't work,
4 days to.
You got to come up with a new game plan and a new plan of attack.
Now you have the time to do it.
You have the time to do it. You have the advantage because you know what you're going to change, but your opponent doesn't know what you're going to change. And now
you could assume they're going to play the same way.
Right, because why would they change? Everything worked great. And I think that's the reason the zigzag works as good as it does.
As a situation, but you're saying is now the line value isn't as great as it used to be.
Vegas isn't adjusting from game 1 to 2
like they
did as much as they did in the past. But I'll tell you what, if a team looks so good in game 1 that Vegas does, adjust it, a point and a half or
Follow
2
the
points.
zigzag.
Well, that's when the zigzag's at its best, because if the team looked that good, remember what I've always said, nobody's as good as their best game.
Right, or as bad as their worst.
Hey, we got to wrap this up. That was segment 1 of our podcast this week. I'm Marco D'Angelo. He's Vegas Runner. Check out all of our videos at pregame.tv, and you can always download and listen on iTunes. Just search for pregame.com.